So hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the SEGA Saturn. This particular console is a PAL model. It's a Model 2 of the SEGA Saturn. You can tell that by its nice little rounded buttons. The Model 1s had kind of an oval shaped button. But yeah, I like these ones, they're quite cool. I really like the black and grey for the buttons. It's kind of very Sega for me. So back in 2016, 2017, this was one of the first consoles I modded, and I jumped right in and did a region-free BIOS. It's also using the Saturn satiator. I was a Kickstarter backer of this, but it's one of the cooler devices you can get for the Saturn. It'll be interesting to go back inside here and see my work from when I was just kind of learning the ropes of soldering and seeing what kind of awaits. So before we get going, we're going to be doing 50-60 Hertz mod. Now, to be honest, most of the time with my Mega Drive, I just leave it in 60 Hertz. Because to install this and use the right wiring diagrams, I'm going to need to find out what revision board we're dealing with. It's been that long since I was in here, I simply can't remember what revision this is. So cool, let me get set up for that. I'll get some tools and we'll crack it open and we'll continue on from there. One thing I like to do when I'm taking consoles apart like this to stop them getting scratched is just to use like a microfiber cloth. So yeah, I'm just going to go around and get these. So now with the lid off, you can see that over here we have a Phantom Universal mod chip that I installed in a previous video. This blue tape is, you will have seen it sometimes, especially in older stereos and things like that. You can still buy it. I often use it to secure things. That's because unlike Captain tape, this kind of orange stuff you see at the back, this tape has the same electrical properties, but it won't withstand heat. So yeah, it's a good way just to secure the mod chip in place. First off, we've got to remove the actual power supply here. If you haven't, if you've been playing this recently, be very careful, especially around this area, because you have quite large capacitor here. I'm going to guess it's 450 volts, 400 volts, 33 microfarads. So you're going to get a bit of a good snap off that if you're unfortunate enough to grab it and across the terminals. So just be careful about that. So I'm just going to remove the this guy. It's no harm leave your console powered off for a while. Indeed, you know, with this still connected, cycle the button a couple of times and that should drain the capacitors. I generally leave consoles powered off for at least 24 hours before I work on them, but this has been powered off for maybe a month, but I'll still be careful around those larger capacitors. Going up a screwdriver there just because that one didn't bite the way I wanted it to. These little magnetic bowls, this is Work Zone. It's a Aldi brand, kind of DIY stuff, but yeah, they're quite handy. One thing I would say is, you know, it is a giant magnet at the end of the day, so if you're working with something that's sensitive to giant magnets, you know, maybe not a good idea. So if you are using one, kind of keep it away from your workspace. Yeah, so it was just the pressure on those pins that was holding it. So I'm just going to flip this over to show you what I mean. So again, making sure to use the plastic and kind of vulcanized rubber side of this screwdriver. This black line here designates the DC side So everything over here is the lower voltage DC, whereas everything the other side of the black line is the high voltage. So you don't want to mess with any of this, especially here where we see the kind of date code and then these two terminals. That's a big cap, so you don't want to bridge those with your finger or anything. You don't want to mess with this. What I'd say is place it on a piece of paper or another non-conductive surface and just put it out of the way. We'll come back to it in the future. Yeah, but it's all good. The caps on it are fine. They don't seem to be leaking. Yeah, with that said, don't take any chances with these. Don't mess around. We've also got to remember to remove this. This is just stops the bottom of the power supply shorting against the actual aluminum case. Don't lose this. Make sure that you keep it. We need to take it out for now, but again, do your best not to lose it. Keep it with the power supply. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just disconnect this ribbon as gently as I can. There we go. And I think I can disconnect this from this end. That's good. There's a grounding screw here. I'm just going to undo that. So there we go. So with it out now, I can see that I was pulling 5 volts from the back of this capacitor. And just desolder that quickly. And now we can remove the entire optical block. Just going to carefully pull it out, and that's us. So that's the Phantom chip. Really cool bit of tech. Real simple install. Can highly recommend one of these if you're retaining your optical block. This kind of neoprene material or foam is like a stick-on stuff. It's quite handy if you have stuff that you want to kind of install in electronics. You can kind of insulate it from stuff using this. So we'll take a closer look at my mod chip work here. My BIOS swap. It doesn't look that bad, to be honest with you. Giving it some TLC. It's funny to see like one of my earliest soldering jobs. Anyways, we'll have a look at that under magnification. So now that we have the main board out, we can see that this is a VA9. So that's what we need to know when looking up the correct wiring diagram for the mod. But with that said, let's just go over the hardware just briefly. So I'll definitely check the CR2032 here to see if it's got around 3.3 volts still left in it. The clock circuitry here is quite hungry, so those batteries don't really last that long. Maybe a little longer than the Dreamcast, but not much longer. Again, FRAM save game or save mod will kind of get rid of the need for a CR2032. It's something I'll be doing in the future. But one of the major kind of weaknesses about the Saturn is the carport, the expansion carport here at the back. The pins inside this thing can get really crooked after a while and make poor connections, added to the fact that people in the past were using cheap action replay carts where the cart edge wasn't great and the width of the PCB wasn't great, so it ended up damaging the pins on the cart slot here. Modern flash carts, or rather action replay carts, are a little better, but you've got to treat this thing like it's about to fall apart at any second, just because they're notorious. It's a major kind of design flaw in all the Saturns. So what I'm going to do in the future is we will do the FRAM to replace, so that it gets rid of the need for the CR2032. Also on this particular console, I'm going to just show you the mini DIN. Now I reflowed this mini DIN in the past, and to no avail. Now I'm using a really high quality SCART cable from Retro Gaming Cables in the UK, but yeah, I mean, whoever had this prior to me may have done some damage to it. I'll double check the solder joints here on the rear to make sure that none are cracked. We'll reflow them. But the next time I'm ordering some mod kits and parts, I'm definitely going to get a replacement din for here. Again, before we get on to the mod, I want to zoom in to my mod work here from 2016 or 2017. I did this when I literally got my first kind of proper temperature controlled iron, you know. So yeah, let's see what kind of disaster I did with this. More conductor than's needed. Frosty the Snowman here. No flux left in the solder by the time I hit it there. You can see here that there's a nice little whisker on that pin. This isn't too bad, but again, there's no need for all this extra conductor here, so we'll probably redo that. One thing I will say is that I took off the original BIOS using just an iron and a quick chip SMD removal kit, the low melting point solder, and that was a good solution because I didn't have hot air at the time. But to be honest with you, if you use hot air in conjunction with the low temp melt solder, you'll get like really good results. This particular BIOS is the Japanese. It's region free, but it has the Japanese graphics. Well, cool folks, I'll get the iron set up and we'll tidy this all up. So folks, as you can see, this is a lot cleaner now, a lot tidier. It was functional before, but yeah, it just bugged me to think that it was my first install was that kind of, yeah. Anyways, looks a lot better and a lot cleaner now. So we'll move on to the 50-60 Hertz region mod. So we're going to be using the console unleashed, SEGA Saturn mod board. Now there's a more modern version of this, but I'm going to go with this one just because I have it at hand. So let me grab the wiring diagrams for the VA9 and we'll get cracking. So now that we know we have a VA9, I'm going to jump over to Consoles Unleashed website. He does some really nice hardware. I'm not being paid or I haven't received free kits, but I definitely like his hardware. He also does an install service for people who mightn't be confident enough to do the install themselves. So currently he has a new design for the SEGA Saturn Switchless region mod kit. It's definitely a lot cooler, I think. Nothing wrong with the current one. Also, if you want to find out a bit more about the install of that, SLR Mod Shop has done a really good video on installing the newer design. Also, SLR Mod Shop does an install service. Again, his work is really neat and well worth checking out. Again, these folks are just people I know through the scene. I like their work. I've never personally had interactions with them or that. I just know that they do some good work. So with that said, if we go to guides and brand, we're going to go for SEGA Saturn and Switchless region. Then we're going to scroll down through the different board revisions to the very bottom to VA9, and we're going to read the full guide. So this main image in the center is what we're really interested in, and this is the one we're kind of going to focus on. So first up, we're going to need to cut some traces. I'm not a big fan of cutting traces, but we really don't have any other options here. What we'll do is try and be as neat as possible, and we'll also use some UV Cure solder mask to seal things up once we're done. So with that said, the first trace we need to cut is on the rear of the board. This is the first one we're going to cut. So I plan on going around doing all the cuts that I have to do, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to use some UV Cure solder mask. You can get this on eBay or AliExpress. You can get it in loads of places. I have a little torch then where I'll use to just quickly cure the UV. Also, I might use a little bit of hot air because it'll just speed up the process by heating up the solution. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. So there's not going to be much talking out of me. I'm just going to go around and cut these traces. Our second trace is between the reset switch and capacitor 122. So that's our traces cut and our solder mask replaced. Yeah, I think we need to remove some components. So I have to remove the LED down here, but I've also got to remove some resistors in this area. So let me zoom in and we'll remove those. So I want to install our LED here, but we're only going to put the center longest leg, the common leg, into this hole here, this terminal closest to the joystick ports. The others I want to bend out of the way, and I'm just going to put it down for size. I know this cable here will be in the way, but that's okay. Literally, I'm going to try and keep it in that footprint. Now that we've removed our components, we're going to turn our attention to VDP2 and a via connected to pin 729. We need to remove the solder mask here and tin it in preparation for a wire. So now we can find a good place for our new mod board to live, and we can hook up the VDP cable and also the LEDs. So next up we're going to do the reset button. Stay tuned to the end because I don't get this right first time around. With the reset lines done, we're going to turn our attention to the SEGA 315-5744, which is a Hitachi chip, a system management and peripheral controller. We're going to be basically soldering 3 wires to this. Well, there you go, folks. That's the 50-60 Hertz switchless installed. I don't know if I got good enough footage of doing the power and ground, but yeah, I used a slightly thicker gauge wire. This is 26 gauge, and yeah, I mean, it just needs a little bit of cleanup here and there. There's like little bits of flux residue and kind of, yeah, most of it's off. Just needs like that final going over. But yeah, it came out good enough. I may in the future, if I was doing this again, do the lines to the LED first, and you could possibly put like a little bit of heat shrink over them and have them kind of poking out a little bit, and that way you could yeah, do it a little easier. Going under the legs of the ICs is a good way to run the reset line. Gets the wires, keeps them out of the way. Yeah, these are a little fiddly. Anywhere we always have two jumper wires going to pins that are beside each other. When you're soldering one, the other will pop off, and vice versa, so it can be a bit of a pain. Yeah, but other than that, it was easy enough, to be honest with you. It could be a tiny bit neater, maybe here on the LED, but that's that. I was glad we came in and fixed this too. So probably in the future I'll come back in and we'll replace this DIN, because I've had a little bit of trouble with this DIN. It's not been great. It's kind of a flaky connection. What I might actually do is, while I have it out now, I don't have a DIN to replace it, but I'll reflow the one that's there. So give me a second, I'll put on the K-type tip, and that's what we'll do. While we have the main board out, it'll be a good time to get some contact cleaner into the expansion cartridge slot. We'll also spend some time to get rid of small bits of rust from the upper kind of shield or housing. So these are just going to rust again, pretty much. So the idea is I'm going to use some of this clear nail varnish just to cover over the bits that I've sanded, and that way, you know, they should last a little bit longer. So we'll check the voltage of the CR2032 battery. So it's reading 3.0 volts. That's a little low, but I currently don't really have a replacement, so it'll have to do for now. I have a kill switch here. I have it hooked into an extension board with individual things on it. Okay, so it's hard for you guys to see there. That light is kind of an orange, the LED. Obviously I removed the battery, so it's going to want to need to redo the clock. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the reset button. Okay. Snake, answer me! Snake! Snake! So it's kind of unfortunate. I put it back together. I should have tested it before I kind of put it all back together. But what we seen was that it, on a cold boot, it was going to basically where you set the clock and then kind of freezing once it got there. That's not a great sign, because it could be the Phantom Universal giving me trouble, or it could be the reset mod, or rather the 50-60 Hz mod. So we'll take it apart. We'll just kind of inspect first the region mod, the 50-60 Hz switchless mod. Inspect that, see if we did it right. Just go over it, have a look at all the solder joints, just ensure that I did it correctly, and then carefully reassemble. So yeah, I'm going to move to the disassembly. I might skip through that once I have all the screws out and we're kind of ready to start pulling stuff out. I'll cut back. So we have the motherboard out and on the desk. So what I'm interested in is immediately around here. I'm not too sure about these connections here. So these are the jumper connections. Before we get too much into it, what I'll do is I'll zoom in on this area and I'll show you what I mean. So future editing Dermot here. I was wrong here. My wiring for JP6, JP10 and JP12 were correct. The wiring according to Consoles Unleashed guide is correct. I was just kind of second guessing myself. Bit of a wild goose chase of a red herring, but I said I'd leave it in. It's good to see my mistakes, and it gives better context to the way the mod went down. If we look at this area here in particular, so we've JP6 coming over here to what is pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then there's nothing on pin 6. Pin 7 and pin 8 then are connected to JP10 and JP12. So I think this is incorrect. So I'm going to move mine down and we'll test that out and see how it works. So there we go. I think that's actually correct. I'm not sure. We'll have to test it. Something else that I'm slightly worried about is if I examine the LED here, you can see that even though we're not using the solder point for the other leg here, I think I may actually be making contact with that, which will mean that even though this is hooked up, it'll probably never get the correct color change to designate the different settings. So I may have to just desolder those wires briefly, take this out of circuit and kind of insulate those holes, maybe place like a little tiny bit of capped on tape underneath so that when I go to solder the legs, I don't end up soldering to the unwanted terminal here. So that's what I think we're going to do. Just because while it's out of the case, I may as well do that now. We'll also have a quick double check of some of the other wiring, but I assume it's possibly fine. Famous last words. Yeah, the way that was soak in the heat, I think we might have a problem there. So we'll see. I could get some flux and some braid to fix it, but get the wires off and we can desolder the main common terminal from the back. So I think you can see here what I was talking about. We have some solder around the terminal that basically we didn't want any to get to, so that would have interfered with our LED. Yeah, I'm gonna put it back together in a kind of rough and ready shape, just enough to test. We'll fire it up and see how our LED behaves. So we have a bare bones setup here. Again, I don't suggest anyone ever do this because this whole area here, killer voltages, be very, very careful. Don't mess around with this stuff. Indeed, cover it. Even in this state here, you can see that I've reinstalled the plastic bit to insulate. So yeah, again, be really careful. This is a dumb idea, don't do this. But yeah. So off screen, sorry I can't get it in shot, is my BVM. And I have RGB going to that. So let me just double check. Yeah, power's on. So, okay, so flash and green, that's good, and it says 57550i, so that's good. Anything else coming up on screen? No, that's not good. So we have a shot lined up here for our BIOS chip, and I just want to do some continuity testing. So anywhere where I can basically test continuity between the top of the leg and near adjacent via, we're going to do that because that just seems like a smart thing to do. Now I wish I had better probes for this, and I do. It's being a bit lazy. So I don't think there was anything wrong with my region-free BIOS install here. None of us are really immune from second guessing ourselves, and especially with new installs, that doubt can creep in, so I don't think I needed to reflow this, but I kinda did anyways. I left it in just to show you that, you know, I'm definitely not immune to kind of doubt and kind of second guessing myself. Okay, so we have reflowed, rechecked, redouble checked stuff. Let's power up and see what happens. Ookly dookly. Yeah. So, give me a second. I'm going to power cycle it and see what happens. So we have green. Now I did set the clock just to the default, so it should come back green, but I doubt I'll be able to change that. So RGB no sync, RGB 57550i. Yeah, the boot isn't great. I'm not getting the starting animation. I'm going straight to the checking disk screen. So that could be the fact that I don't have a disk drive, so hold on. Okay, so I have a drive in here now, and the top back on just so I can see if I can use the reset button. I want to see if the behavior is any different with that all ready to go, so let's see. We got green. Oh, we have a startup animation. Very nice. Drive empty. That's okay. Hold the reset button. Nada. I wonder if my problem all along was the universal BIOS chip and not the actual pins that I reallocated. Only one way to find out, isn't there, folks? Let's do some rewiring. Attempt number 3. Okay, so we are rewired back to the wiring from Consoles Unleashed guide. I beat things out. I went over it with a little bit of flux and came back then and just cleaned it up with alcohol and stuff. I double checked our reset buttons here. So we're back together. Take 5, I guess. Sorry again, you guys can't see the screen, but once I get it working, I'll be able to deploy a second camera or something. You're not really missing much. It's just the boot screen, and that's it. What we really want to see, and why I'm not that pushed, is we're actually focused on this little LED here and the reset button, and getting it to change color by holding a reset button. So, okay. Oh, guess it helps to actually turn the outlet on. So we'll do that. Okay, so we're green. We've got a boot logo. Okay, so it's giving out about an empty drive. Nothing. One last thing, let's have another look at the reset switch, and I might flip them around and see if, you know, if it's looking for an active high or an active low. Flipping them around might help. I don't know, might not. Okay, so here we go again. So everything else is working, it's just our little board here. So I know my connection to this point here is okay. I know these are okay. I know roughly that these are okay. I know on Mega Drives anyways, some revisions have a high reset signal, i.e. the signal goes high on reset, and some have the signal goes low on reset. So my waffle here about high and low reset signals kinda doesn't really mean anything. I simply got the wires the wrong way around, I think. So yeah, we've flipped our switches around. Let me get it back together and we'll test it out. Okay folks, so we swapped the reset signals around, and I'm just going to hit power. Okay, so we've a nice little green LED. 575 at 50i, which is interlaced, of course. Okay, reset. Hold reset button. Okay, it's working. Orange, red, let go. 480 at 60i.
Mission complete.
Orange and red are 480 at 60 hertz, and yeah, I have no way of actually kind of demonstrating to you because orange and red are going to look very similar. Be nice if we could move away from the green, orange, red LEDs to RGB. With that said, let me set up a shot where you can see the full effect, and we'll also put back in the Saturn satiator, the flash cart thingy for the Sega Saturn. Cool. Let me get that set up and I'll be right back. Okay folks, so sorry about the remote cam here. We are on the tripod. So again, thanks to Eric for the Sony BVM. It's awesome. I never thought I'd own one. It's a really cool thing to have. It's brought a whole new kind of aspect to retro gaming for me. A whole new way to enjoy these awesome pieces of hardware. So that said, I'm going to fire up the Sega Saturn. What's good about this, as you can see, automatically we're in 480 at 60i. So Once we get into a menu here, it's happy enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit and hold the reset button. It's gone green. I'll let go. Console's reset. And now it says 575 50i. So green is kind of our default PAL setting. To be honest, I'll probably, go to orange 480 60i. Again, it's always going to be the Japanese boot animation because that's what's flashed onto the BIOS chip. And I'm going to cycle to red. And the console will reset. And you'll notice it hasn't actually changed because it's the same resolution. The only difference between the orange and the red is the language. One's English, the other's Japanese. So with that said, what I'm going to do now is let me put in the Saturn satiator and we'll try that. Okay, so the satiator is installed. Let's see what happens. So good boot, 480 60i. Should drop us into the satiator menu. There you go. Dungeons and Dragons collection. Metal Slug. Guardian Heroes. Man, I have a lot of good stuff on here. Cyberbots, awesome. I'd nearly end up playing Saturn now if I'm not careful. Die Hard Arcade. I guess we put that on because it's got the switching between progressive and interlaced, so it'll be interesting to see. So I'll just play a couple of seconds of it so you can kind of get an idea for what's going down. Man, this game is so like 1994, 1995, early 3D stuff. It has a jump button. So we get the idea. It's working pretty good. So I'm just going to power off. Okay, so next up I'm going to test out Street Fighter Alpha 2. This is the PAL version. We're also going to use the Action Replay cart. Okay, so the Action Replay cart is in. Street Fighter Alpha 2's there. Let's just see what happens. I can't remember exactly how this goes once I have a disc in. I think it does take over from the satiator. I think it will boot to the disc instead. Yeah, that's what's going down. Street Fighter Alpha 2 uses the extended RAM in the Action Replay, so that's kind of what I want to see here. So I'd say like the only kind of downside with Street Fighter Alpha 2 on Saturn is the load time, simply because it's disc media. But from on all the kind of home ports at the time, it's probably the best. Until you got the Street Fighter Alpha series on Dreamcast, which slightly bigger sprites, I think, more animations, stuff like that. Street Fighter 03 Psycho Dojo on Dreamcast. Epic. So yeah, I have to set the audio properly for stereo. Oh, she got me. Oh, nice. Well, at least I ended on a super. Well, cool, folks. Let's wrap things up. So yeah, I'm putting it together for the final time now. I'm just going to, again, clean the lens. My optical drive is in pretty good nick, all things considered. I don't think this console did a heck of a lot of work in its previous life. So we're finally able to wrap up the Saturn mod, which was a simple 50-60 Hz switchless mod, but we went down a rabbit hole. We tend to do that quite a bit on this channel. I can say conclusively that the reset button was my fault. The fact that the LED was stuck orange, again, that would lead me to believe that it was shorted against the through hole that we weren't meant to populate for that LED. But now, you know, the console's going good. We do have to go back in there. I want to replace the DIN. I would always advise using good SCART cables. I use retro gaming cables in the UK. They do some really good high quality cables. I suspect that the previous owner had been using either stock cables or other kind of cheaper eBay cables where the DIN was possibly not the correct size, and that may have put some strain on the actual DIN. I'll also do the FRAM mod so that we don't have to rely on the CR2032. The battery circuits in most Sega consoles really do chew through the batteries, so it's good to replace those if you can. So I'm hoping to be over on Twitch every so often streaming off the Sega Saturn, and I kind of feel a bit better about doing that now that I know I'm in NTSC 480 60 Hz. I hope you enjoyed the video. I really do love the Saturn. If you haven't ever checked out the platform, I suggest checking out some of the emulators, dipping your toes in that way. The hardware is still quite available. The games can be expensive, but between the Satiator and the various optical drive emulators out there, you know, you do have options for playing on original hardware. If you're used to the Sega CD hardware, the Saturn is like the natural progression of that. Sega really had a habit of trying to bring the best of their old hardware into the new stuff. So much like you have the Zilog Z80 on board the Sega Mega Drive as kind of a throwback to the Master System and the Mark III to give you compatibility. The same is true of this. You can see the same design philosophy carried through into this, so hence the kind of jumper setting for your region and things like that, even though it does have a BIOS and you'd expect that to handle that. No, they've kind of got, you know, a bit of everything going on here, hence the overcomplicated chipset, the two VDPs, all that craziness. But yeah, it really is an awesome console. Much like a lot of other people, I couldn't afford a Saturn back in the day. I was doing most of my gaming on PC or on PlayStation. I've always wanted one, so back in 2017 when I got the option to get one, I jumped at the chance and jumped in. It's cool to see how I progressed. My original solder job, although functional, was very ugly on the BIOS, so it was nice to go back in there and clean it up. I do, even though no one's ever going to see it, I'll know that it's in there and it bugs me. Hopefully we'll have more Sega Saturn in the very near future. I've got some videos coming up maybe on the Master System and some other surprises in store. So cool folks, thanks for tuning in and I'll chat to you all again.